guys, Jacqueline Fernandez here at the Alert Center. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. This is a really fun story today from the Flatwater Free Press. We're chatting with reporter Jeremy Chorley on his recently published article, Omaha's No Cruising Signs, a rarely enforced relic of a teenage pastime. So I'm going to kind of hand it over to Jeremy right now and just introduce him and have him tell him a little bit about himself and what this process was like. Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. So my name's Jeremy. I work for the Flatwater Free Press, and a lot of what I cover is sort of heavy investigative work, but I got to do sort of a fun story that centers on my neighborhood. I live in Midtown in Omaha, and there are all these new no cruising signs near where I live. And when I moved here last year, I was wondering um, how they got there and what purpose they serve today. And it turns out there's a really fascinating story behind it that goes back to the era of Big and Bon Jovi, the 80s, when cruising was a major pastime on Dodge Street. It was later outlawed where I live in Midtown, along Leavenworth and Park Avenue. And now it's sort of this just relic of the past because it's not enforced by the Omaha Police Department. They haven't issued a citation for cruising in over a decade now.
Yeah, so this is a really just kind of a fun story. And Jeremy, before we broadcast this live, we were chatting about the film American Graffiti and just what a cultural relic that film in and of itself is. So it's something that's on your to-do list, you were telling me.
Absolutely, I haven't seen the film yet, and I regret that, but it is homework and good homework as soon as I can.
Yeah, okay. And tell me just a little bit more. I mean, I wanted to play a clip of that film for our viewers, but unfortunately that part is not working. So we are headed to Dodge Street, right? So this is the main stretch from 69th to 90th. And in your article that I'm referencing right here in my hand, we have these great photos from the 1980s from Dawn Slama Cephas, who kind of relives this nostalgic time when she was cruising Dodge Street. Can you tell us more about that? And I'll kind of show you these photographs as you go.
So I actually came across Dawn because she is one of the administrators of a Facebook group about cruising Dodge. And it's mostly for people who are now in their 50s and 60s to reconnect with each other. And I reached out to her via Facebook Messenger and asked if she would tell me about her cruising days. Just a gold mine as far as a reporter is concerned. She was, very poetic in describing her good old days cruising Dodge. Her crew, as she put it, hung out near Jiffy Lube on Dodge Street, and they, had a lot of awesome looking parties in the late '80s there. Um, and if you see these photos, you will, instantly know exactly when they came from because they look like the '80s, just completely embodied. Um, and it was outlawed by the Omaha City Council in 1992. She was already a mother at that point, but just looking at those photos from like this bygone era really put me there, even though I wasn't alive at the time.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that it just seemed like a more innocent time, really. I mean, we didn't have all the stress factors of social media and the internet and just all these different ways that we can distract ourselves. So it was kind of just like it looked like just hanging out with your friends and showing people your cool cars kind of thing. And in your article at one point you kind of mentioned this was a cultural trend at the time, and this tradition started back in the 1950s, right? So you kind of wanted to show like, hey, look at my cool ride. Right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Exactly. I think, cruising was kind of a natural trend once car culture really began to take off in America after World War II. And, the sort of the cultural home of cruising, I think, is Southern California. You can think of hot rods, you can think of low riders, you can think of the Beach Boys singing about this in all of their songs. But this was going on across the country. Um, in Council Bluffs, this was happening as well on Broadway, and so I think yeah, it was just like a way for young people to meet up kind of without adult chaperones, show off their cool rides,
Right.
uh, and get together on a warm Saturday night.
Yeah, gosh, that sounds good. If only we had warm Saturday nights here in Omaha, but hopefully soon, hopefully soon. So we'll keep that in mind. So we'll talk a little bit about the Dodge cruising ban. So this actually came in effect in 1992. And there was one family who was in support of the ban. Again, reading off of your article here, Tom and Jerry Tinsley, their 18-year-old son Robert, was stabbed to death by another young man during a night of cruising back in 1981. So clearly, they were in support of this cruising ban. And then in opposition of the ban, you know, some of the teenagers came out and said this is a, you know, if an adult drove by a store or restaurant on Dodge more than 3 times in 2 hours, the police probably wouldn't find them. But this is a major stereotype that adults have about teenagers. They're likely up to no good. So again, support of the ban and then opposition of the ban. Can you chat a little bit about that, some of your findings there?
Yeah, so those were both letters that the city forwarded me in sort of this packet full of testimony from 1992, and I was amazed that that still existed. But yeah, I mean, Tom and Jerry Tinsley testifying about their son who was murdered on Dodge Street reminds you that even something kind of lighthearted and fun can turn really. Um, and then I think reading the testimony from the teenagers, they were among several groups of teenagers that let their thoughts be known to the council. Um, it really highlights to me this divide between older folks and teenagers back in the 80s that I think is even more stark than it was when I was a teenager, and maybe more than it is now. I think there is sort of like this real like cultural division that you had between teens and the adults, that was very evident in looking through some of these pieces of testimony that were offered when this bill came up in the city council in 1992.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot going on. And you spoke with Officer Neil Bonacci, actually, with the Omaha Police Department, who said this is not really an issue here anymore, right? I mean, we have this ordinance now that was passed in, let's see, the anti-cruising ordinance on March 24th of 92. And since then, I guess it's just kind of faded with the era.
Right. So interestingly, if you go drive down Dodge, and you go from 69th to 96th Street, which is where these signs had originally hung, at least I couldn't find any of the no cruising signs. If you can find them, let me know. But those seem to be mostly taken down. The ones that you're still able to find in Omaha and Midtown now, those were installed after decided in the year 2000 to ban cruising there. It was done for sort of different reasons to prevent prostitution and drug dealing. So this wasn't sort of an aim to clamp down on a teenage pastime in the Leavenworth and Park Avenue neighborhood, but that's where you'll find these signs now.
Yeah.
As far as enforcement goes, there isn't much. I mean, there hasn't been a single person cited in Omaha for cruising since 2013. And so, Lieutenant Bonacci made clear that OPD knows this is on the books, but it's just not something that really comes up a lot on the street, and they don't feel a need to enforce it.
Yeah, and I have that sign up from Leavenworth. I live in the area too. And I mean, just look at that though. I mean, the maximum penalty is $500 fine and 6 months in jail. I mean, that's pretty stiff, I would think.
Absolutely. That was my first impression as well. As I was like, I could go to jail for 6 months for cruising. I don't even know what cruising is. I think a lot of younger folks probably see this sign and just don't even know what that means. And it
Right.
turns out there is sort of a legal definition for it. It's if you pass a traffic control point 3 times on one of these streets during the nighttime, that would be
Interesting.
considered cruising in a legal sense. But again, I think you're pretty safe to do that now since it doesn't seem to be a high enforcement priority.
Yeah, it would appear so anyway. At least I haven't heard of anyone that's been arrested for cruising, yeah, in the past decade or so either. But also, just kind of wondering, so this seems like a fun article for you, as you mentioned in the beginning of our discussion. Any main takeaway points? Anything extra you'd like to add about this?
I think the takeaway I have is broader than I guess just cruising. It's that if you see something interesting in your neighborhood, question it. What wonder where it came from, what the history is. You might get a good story out of it. Because I think probably thousands of people pass these signs every day and maybe don't know what it is. Maybe they know where it came from, but they don't know the full history. And so I think this was a great opportunity to take a step back and kind of learn the full story here behind something that we probably all take for granted.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, keep your eyes open and ask questions. Gotta love it. All right, that was our interview with Jeremy Turley from the Flatwater Free Press. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I appreciate it.
All right, so if you can still hear me, we're going to actually head over to the Flatwater Free Press website. That's flatwaterfreepress.org, and you can see Jeremy's story is right here. If you click on his story, you can take a look again at the photos that we just showed you, and he has, a bunch of information just about the, excuse me, oops, click out that pop-up, just about cruising itself. Again, you can see Don Slamasif is here. Pretty cute in the cruising days. Gotta love those 1980s photographs right there. And you can go through and again check out the maximum penalty. So don't cruise on Leavenworth is basically what we're trying to say there. In the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me at the Alert Center. Now we do have more information, more news on our website. That's WOWT.com. So you can always go there for the latest news. You can see the breaking banner. We have O.J. Simpson dying at age 76. And then we have a Huskers update with Matt Rule on our website right now. But before we go, let's take a look outside because it's absolutely beautiful out there, right? Take a look. Here's a live look from First National Camera, and just sunshine you can see throughout. It appears that traffic's flowing smoothly. Let's take a closer look at the sky though from Children's, Nebraska. So we will head over there. Barely a cloud in the sky, a few clouds popping up here and there. But of course, our meteorologists will have much more for you coming up later tonight. So thanks again for joining me at the Alert Center. I'm Jacqueline Fernandez. We'll see you at First at 3. Until then, have a wonderful day.